Welcome to A Different Frame. I'm your co-host, Anisha.
And I'm Kendra.
And I'm Kadita.
And this is a podcast for the people, by the people. So this show is made possible by Alabama Values Progress, a communications hub that's dedicated to breaking the cycle of misinformation during the times where the truth is pretty much hard to find. So basically, we're delivering facts, data, and receipts on what's happening in Alabama. Now, last episode, we provided a recap of the public hearings and just expressed some of the community's concerns and also showed the lack of transparency and accountability by the reapportionment committee. Today's episode is called It's Go Time, and we have a special guest with us. So Kendra, why don't you tell everyone what's on tap today?
Yeah, so today's episode, we're gearing up for the special sessions and informing people on how they can tap in and connect with organizations on the ground working around redistricting. So we're joined today by our special guest, Evan Milligan, who is the Executive Director of Alabama Forward, which is the head of Alabama's Civic Engagement Table, and where organizations have been super duper busy gearing up for the sessions and during the entire redistricting session.
Yes, they have.
Yeah. So, Evan, thanks for joining us. Can you explain what a civic engagement table is and what role the table has played in this redistricting work?
Sure. Thank you for having me. What's up, Anisha, Kendra, Kadita, Kevin in the background, backstage.
Yeah,
hello,
shout out to the producers.
Right, shout out to the producers. So a civic engagement table is basically a word for like a standing coalition. A table is shorthand for coalition. Lots of states that have a lot going on in terms of advocacy work might have many different types of tables. You might have tables that exist to bring groups together to focus on environmental issues. They might call that a green table or a women's rights table. Black Lives Matter could be considered a table in some instances. For us here in Alabama, Alabama Forward is really bringing together coalitions and private 501c3 groups together that may have a range of different issues they focus on independently, but together are all committed to registering more voters, making sure that more people of color, 18 to 45-year-olds, LGBTQIA women, pro-democracy, neighbors are becoming involved in the civic engagement, and that our institutions, our democratic institutions, are as accessible to every Alabamian as possible. So that's what brings everybody together in one space. I think you asked me for a second question that I hope I feel like I forgot it. What'd you say?
Yeah. No, I'm sure we'll get to it. Shout out to the table. Shout out to the collective. You all know I'm a firm believer that there is power in the collective. For August 12th, what's the significance of that date? When I say that, Evan, what is that? Does that ring a bell? August 12th?
Is that the day the census data was
Yes,
released?
It was data drop day. And when that happened, coalitions kicked into gear. They had already been on the ground, just raising awareness around the process, but really kicked into gear after that data drop. Can you just share a little bit, about the data in terms of the 2021 census data and what that could potentially mean, or, in terms of fair mapping or the demographic shifts like in our state?
Yeah, I think we kind of, even before the data was released, just based on estimations, we already knew that where the population growth was concentrated in the state. So we knew that, Birmingham Metro was no longer the leading space as far as population growth, that was surpassed by the Huntsville metro area, Fairhope, Baldwin County metro area, as well as I think even Auburn and Lee County were outpacing. That doesn't mean that Birmingham metro still doesn't have the largest raw population, but in terms of just overall percentage growth, those regions kind of were growing faster. So we knew that was happening, but what the census data helped us understand is that during the first first part of the last 10 years, a lot of that growth, the data confirmed that a lot of that growth was driven by, foreign-born neighbors that were moving here to the state. It wasn't Alabamians. It was definitely not due to our birth rate. Definitely not due to people moving back home from wherever. Really, the population growth is on the back of the very people that, almost 10 years ago, with our anti-immigration bill, we were trying to keep out of the state. And because they were willing to come here and join our communities, they saved the state the loss of a congressional seat.
That's right. We were concerned really about that.
So,
yeah. So, also in terms of just like that demographic shift, we were talking in one of the episodes where we talked about representation and how it matters and how redistricting is ultimately connected to representation. And just how, due to the demographic shifts, is far times that the lines are drawn in a way to where people can elect officials that represent them, or, in terms of diversity of gender, race, sexuality. So is there, and I'm not to put you on the spot, Evan, but is there anything in the data that would make you believe that is something, that we can accomplish in terms of the way the maps are drawn?
As far as having more representative maps?
Yes.
Well, I think, based on the data, we definitely see an opportunity for there to be 2 districts. So right now we have 7 congressional seats, one of which has a majority non-white population and has been electing a Black representative since the early 90s when that district was created. That's District 7, is currently represented by Congresswoman Terry Sewell. She was preceded by Congressman Arthur Davis. And so, that seat is one of 7 right now. There's an opportunity to have 2 districts that where you could have, people of color, non-white voters really having a heavy influence on the outcome of those elections and being able to elect the candidate of their choice, whether that person was in fact a Black person or a non-white person, or if it was someone that they played a decisive role in selecting to serve in that seat. So right now, the demographics of the state would allow for that. The only thing is a legislature going to allow for that? We've had several groups that work in our coalition that y'all have talked about, I'm sure, on this show before, that presented a range of maps that could show how we could arrive at that goal to have 2 of these, you call them minority opportunity districts or Black opportunity districts. And the map that was released yesterday, still, it not only does it only still have the 1, but it actually undercounts and undercuts the power of Black people in that 1 district even more than our current map. So, in many ways, it looks like that particular map is a step back, which is kind of disheartening because we see the data right now could support 2, let alone a weaker version of what we already have.
Shout out to Chris England for that drop.
Yeah.
Right. That drop on
we
Twitter.
Definitely appreciate that transparency. Yeah. So Evan, in talking about like the need, and if you look at what we really need to, truly show the proper demographics of Alabama, could you tell our listeners like how we can maybe combat that to kind of get what we want, to maybe have 2 majority minority districts, because that really would be more show like what Alabama's demographics are, and we need more fair representation and more representation of what our state looks like, really. I think
there's a couple things, I guess, from strategy right now. It's folks really calling their legislators, emailing them, writing them, visiting with them to let them know what they want to see out of the maps. There's 4 maps. When that special session starts Thursday and it ends, and, at some point in early to mid November, at the end of that session, they will have selected the map that they'll present to the governor. Most likely the governor is going to sign off on it. The Congress map, the State Board of Education, the State House, and the State Senate map. So those 4 maps. And if folks want to make sure that those maps represent principles of fairness and equity, please get in contact with your representative. Tap into some of the training so you can even understand how redistricting impacts the place that you live, how it impacts your livelihood, the roads, the bridges, the hospitals in your community. That's one part. The second part, though, is understanding more broadly at a concept level, why does a more competitive democracy benefit me? So, I think, and this is a message I think all Alabamians we really need to sit with, whether you white, whatever your race is, are you served by the current system in Alabama? Because it's not just that it's benefiting white conservatives, right? This is a system in the state, but white conservatives aren't monolithic. There's a lot of different types of white conservative Alabamians. Many of them disagree with folks that have most of the control of the current electoral process. They're not necessarily well served by having districts where you have demographics that are so overwhelmingly white that it doesn't make it competitive for people with a different ideology or a more multicultural message. Because what that does is if you're a more moderate Republican or a more fiscally conservative Republican, but not necessarily a social, you're not a stop the steal Republican. Yeah. If you run in those districts, you have to run so far to the right to even be competitive because there's no other person of color or no other demographic of voters in that state to create a more balanced conversation. So these primaries, you have people that are pushing the conversation much further than where many of the even conservatives in Alabama really see themselves. And so that puts us in a position where now, last year we had a congressperson participating in that Stop the Steal rally, and our attorney general, we found out was making contributions to that rally that preceded the insurrection at the Capitol. You have this enabling of that kind of far right culture when it's unchecked, because we've created voting districts and that kind of enable the most extreme kind of political rhetoric. And in order to moderate that, we need more competition. We need more competition, more diversity to help bring, the conversation a little bit back to the middle.
They don't want the competition. They don't want it.
Right.
They don't.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point about like the accountability aspect. That was a good point. Sure.
Yeah, and then also thank you for bringing up, contacting your legislator. Definitely, Alabama Election Protection Network is a great resource for that. They currently have a campaign going on. Visit voterprotection.org. You all, if you don't know what to say, how to say it, they have a letter. You just type in your name and send a letter. Yeah. Right. So that's voterprotection.org. Contact your legislators and demand fair maps. Because guess what? They work for who? They work for you, right?
Right.
So yeah, they work for all of us. But what's that noise? Y'all hear something like a mixtape? What? Okay, well, something happened. It was just like, okay.
I gave you a sound effect, but I didn't mean for it to be that loud or that long. I'm sorry. I was digging you up.
What?
He tried to drop his own sound effect.
I played with my own little studio in my pocket.
And look, the generation I'm from that when that drop comes, beep, beep, beep.
Right. You got all that.
And now back to your regularly scheduled program.
But I also, for our viewers and listeners who, like I said, well, submitting a letter and then what? How can I stay connected with this? Because redistricting is just one thing. That one way to get involved in civic participatory activities, and we have so many, as we mentioned in the other episodes, redistricting is connected to so many issues, right? So there's a year-round constant cycle where we need you to stay tapped in if we're truly gonna build a better Alabama and hold officials accountable and increase the transparency in our democratic processes. So And I know that Alabama Forward has 2 initiatives, and they're dope initiatives. We looked at them beforehand. One is shakethefield.org. And can you just tell us a little bit about shakethefield.org?
Yep. So, Alabama Forward, like I said before, is a coalition of groups that, despite whatever we might disagree on and all of our diverse, real core mission statements of these independent groups, when we come together, there's one thing we all agree on. This state will be better if we have a more diverse electorate, if we have younger people involved in the process, more women, more people that are currently underrepresented and more marginalized in the state, actually really pushed at the center of policy decisions and civic engagement. So all that sounds good. The reality is that most people don't spend more than 5 days a year voting, unless you live in Montgomery, where we seem to have a special election every other week or something like that.
Every other week, right?
Yeah, we
might vote like 10, 15 days out of the year, but most people, you spend 360 days doing something other than voting, right?
Yeah.
And so our concept is that if we want to bring and inspire people here and our sisters and brothers and cousins who are from here, who have moved elsewhere, but can still make contributions and still tap in with us from wherever they live. If we want to inspire folks to really double down and commit to a vision for this state that's more equitable and more inclusive, more functional, we have to get people's attention in those other 360 days of the year. It's not just come to vote. We have to give them something to vote for, and that we do that by connecting the democracy to their daily lives. And so, 2 ways we're doing that. Shake the Field is an opportunity to talk to Alabamians about identity. If you're growing up here and you happen to be a person whose style or ideas about life are not, you're in the minority, or you didn't feel free, or you want to do something that you don't see done here, the natural instinct, go elsewhere, leave. Okay, fine, go see the world, go wherever you want to go. But, what are we doing to also tap into the cultures that we have here to really also find some things that do give us a sense of pride about our home communities? Because if we don't have that identity, then we're not fighting for anything. And there's nothing that actually gives us something inspirational to say to people who already are very cynical and jaded about public service and government. So Shake the Field is inviting people to think about, how do you find the folks in your community that was that organizer, that child care worker, that person that did the community garden, that taught you how to quilt, whatever. How do we celebrate these traditions that are specific to our communities here in Alabama, and then center those and center our love for those in our advocacy and in our identities as Alabamians? The shine of light, though, is same reason I love her. If God forbid something happened to her, how you gonna come up to me and the first thing you saying to me as Kendra, Anisha, or Kadita is something about voting? And then I done lost, I don't know how many family members over the last however long with, the pandemic. My life has been disrupted, whatever. Like, don't start the conversation with something as lame as that, because I'm already disconnected. My guard is up. Right? Like, start with acknowledging my grief, or with like
a human approach, right?
Yeah. So it's just trying to give people resources related to grief, vaccination. Again, tapping into inspiration, just basic human connection. You don't have to be on board with anything else we do, but you can take those resources and hopefully light that candle for your loved one. And if you are willing to then also think about, why did we have these vulnerabilities in our state to begin with that left us without insurance, Medicaid coverage, and no public health infrastructure, where we were this exposed? If somebody's willing to also go down that road, we building the bridge for them. We welcome you to come. But even if all you want to do is acknowledge your loved one, we want to give folks resources to do that, and also process the grief related to the last year and a half. So that's shining light.
Yeah, like I love that. I love that model, just taking that humanistic approach to just letting people know, hey, I see you. Like, you know what I'm saying? And understanding where they are. Like you mentioned, you said lame, Evan, starting out with that lame introduction in terms of voting or getting involved or something like that.
Yes.
But I really think that should be a model that's adopted just across the whole GOTV universe, especially in communities that are marginalized and disenfranchised. And you talk about these communities that are dealing with so many issues. And they may have these drive-by, get out the vote campaigns that comes every important election cycle. But then they're like, where are you year round? Or I can't even focus on that today. Like, that's the last thing on my mind, So I really think that those that are involved in that get out the vote work should really look at approaching it to that lens, like meeting people where they are first before you make that type of ask, or even showing the connection. I saw on the Shine a Light website where you do have a space where people want to get involved in civic engagement activities. There's a link for that. And then, Shake the Field. I'm such a fan of the work that Shake the Field is doing. Yeah. So like I told our listeners, I told you all we were going to be the civic plug for you to just help you tap into what's going on, because there's a lot of organizations that are doing some great work, in this state. So just want to drop those links down there again. That's shakethefield.org and shinealightалabama.org. Shine Alabama. Sorry, shinealabama.org. So, but Evan, we just want to thank you for joining us today. We're just so happy to have you. And so as we wrap up, before we leave, I want to first, because, looking at Shake the Field.
Hold on. Before you say that, though, can I plug real quick? All you organizations and advocates and students and retirees, whoever, if y'all have work that we can promote, that's what these platforms exist for. We put the tools for Shine a Light out so you have something new to take to the people you're already canvassing. When I say lame, I'm not saying voting is lame. I'm saying starting with things that are not where the people we're wanting to reach already are, makes us come off as lame. And so it makes us come off as deaf and disconnected, and not deaf in the dope Helen Keller way, but I guess numb to the people that we're trying to really reach. And we want to give tools that can help folks do the work they're already doing. So definitely, please let us know about what you're doing, if we can promote you, if we can get you resources. And certainly if y'all are interested in joining with us, please visit the website to learn about how to join.
Yes, but before we go, we cannot leave without playing the new single off Shake the Field.
Yes, play it.
Where did they made that? They Shake the Field made a song. They have a lot of content coming out.
Yes. They do, and I've been following it. I've been following their series, Frequency, on social. But before you do that, we pulled it. We're gonna drop an exclusive here. So
what?
Before
How
we
you get that? Khadija, you gave her that?
No, don't worry about it.
Kendra?
Don't worry about it. But no, don't worry about how we got it. But before we go, just want to. Because I'm gonna let our listeners just ride that out. So, but for everyone who's tuning in, you may be wondering how you can stay connected and stay involved in the redistricting process. So we definitely encourage you to tune in to future A Different Frame episodes. The podcast is streaming on all platforms, and you can also catch the video version, the podcast, on social media platforms, at Alabama Values Progress, and also our website. So like, follow, subscribe, and share to just stay connected and get the latest news and updates regarding the special sessions, and also to connect with our partner organizations who are on the ground fighting for fair maps. So Khadija, why don't you tell them what's on tap for the next episode?
for the next episode. So join us on episode 4. They better get these lines right. And
Yes.
I will have a special guest there, and we will be providing an update regarding the special sessions and pointing out the lack of transparency in the process.
Yes. So let's go ahead and take us out. You heard it first here. Shine a Light, Alabama. Let's go.
Is there life in the universe?
That's what I tell my black people right now. Health is wealth.
To the working people, prayers.
What do you hope to learn on this mission?
Everything I've learned about life is by living.
You get this up, money, me, I want legacy.
Big mama, roots on a plantation. Sweat, blood, tears, and a whole lot of praying. Branches passed down all 7 generations. Trees dropping fast, they don't want vaccination. Need some communication about a thing called education. Is you a doctor? Are you a nurse? Or you the patient? What's that we saying? We don't like the corporations, but who you paying on the internet for information? Up all night, we reading about a dissertation, but it's a fact that we ain't read the dissertation. Observation, we so confident in what we saying. Then why we run into the doctor when they get the spraying? Maybe I'm basic, but the nurses that we call for saving, those the same folks we round here claiming work with Satan. Well, okay then, go get your custom ventilation. Mind replaying, flashback of this conversation. Every breath I breathe is a chance for a better me. I lost too many folk that don't really feel right. Candle in the wind, watch it burn on a steel night.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light for my people. Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Help my people.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Shine a light.
All my people shine. All my people shine.
I shine a light for my people. We lost in the fight. I lost a life and a life and another life. My life ain't feeling right. Clouds, I can't see the sky. I couldn't see they face. No, I couldn't say goodbye. Why would you try to provide me another lie? You say don't trust, man. Who put the fire in your eyes? Workers out here on their job. Coffee pills, prayers to God. How come everything to keep us living got to be so hard? Long days, loud pains, nothing but a bill due. No insurance, but they posting about the treatment healing you. What was the outcome? How did they detect that? If you can't see paperwork, why would you respect that? Why would you select that? Cause it ain't a debt trap. That's how people fall in gaps, fiending for some get back. Then evading facts as an act of resistance. But how are you resisting if you missing? Do you get it? Do you get it? Every breath I breathe is a chance for a better me. I lost too many folk that don't really feel right. Candle in the wind, watch it burn on a steel night.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light for my people. Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Help my people.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Help my people. Shine a light.
All my people shine. All my people shine.
I'm living flagrant, melanated, vaccinated. I know you hate it. My life, I do appreciate it. We at the bottom, while all the top stars race their spaceships. It's only right. We brought the bars, we in the basement. Maybe we change, or maybe this our closing statement. Remember names, remember vibes. Those are sacred, healing time. It's gonna take longer than a playlist. Together shine. You shine, I shine. That's how we make it. You get the short money. I want legacy. Every breath I breathe is a chance for a better me. I lost too many folk that don't really feel right. Candle in the wind, watch it burn on a steel night.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light. Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Help my people.
Shine a light for my people, shine a light.
Shine a light.
All my people shine. All my people shine.
Yeah, shout out to the workers, to the nurses, to the doctors, the caretakers, the food makers, the entertainers, the money makers, the room shakers, the educators. Here's the last part, we almost done. So you say, all my people shine, all my people shine.
All my people shine.